Christine Giordano. Welcome to On Your Watch. The recent superstorm Sandy cost the Long Island economy $10 billion, according to James Medore's article in Newsday. It also swept away 2,000 homes. 2,000 homes were destroyed, not to mention the businesses on Long Island and in the metro New York area. That means a lot of recovery ahead. That also means some people lost their jobs. My guest today is Amanda Augustine. She's the job search expert for the popular website, TheLadders. She's here today to talk about re-careering, transitioning, as well as finding the $100,000 a year job, and on part 2 of the show, tips for recent college grads. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you, Christine.
Can you tell me what TheLadders is and what they do?
Sure. TheLadders is actually coming up on its 10-year anniversary this coming year. We've been around since 2003, and really, we are an online job matching service for all professionals who are career-driven. So originally, our roots were in the 100K plus market. We helped that type of job seeker transition to their next role. In the last year, we've actually opened our doors to anybody who's 40K and up, career-driven, to help them find that right job sooner.
Okay. And I noticed that your website also offers the name of the recruiter that posts the job.
So as a member of TheLadders, we have a free and a paid version. And as a free basic member, you have access to a number of job listings that are relative to your career track, recruiters, as well as career advice. And with those job listings, sometimes you have the employer or the recruiter behind the job posted. Some are also confidential, but in some cases, you'll be able to access more information about who's behind the job. And as a paid member, you get unlimited access to all of our recruiters, our job listings, our career advice, as well as a free resume critique by a certified resume writer.
Great. Okay. So let's say I am a job searcher and I go on your site and I see the job listing that I want. What should I do from there?
So the first thing you should do is try and figure out if you know that company at all and if you know anybody in that company. Research has shown that you are 10 times more likely to get a call back for an interview if you can have an employee referral with that application. So before you blindly hit that apply button, the first thing I'd say is take a step back and see if you can figure out what company is behind that job. What information can you find out about it so you can better craft your cover letter and tailor your resume specifically to that role. Okay. If you know somebody, try and see if they can also submit it on your behalf. If it's an online application, you may have an opportunity to insert their name into the application process, which again has the same benefits.
What are the benefits? How does that increase your odds?
So it's interesting. I talk to a lot of recruiters and hiring managers, and the buzzword you hear is, the 80-20 rule, the 20-80 rule. You hear it a lot everywhere, but in recruiting, it means that if you've made it to the interview, 20% of the time is really spent on understanding, do you have the right skill set? The other 80% of that time is trying to figure out if you will fit in with the team and the corporate culture. They like employee referrals because they assume if you know somebody at that company, you already know something about that organization and it makes sense to you and appeals to you, or that employee wouldn't have let them use your name or wouldn't let them put their name down on the application or submit the person's resume if they didn't think they'd be a good fit. So it's an extra screening process that they don't have to necessarily pay for.
Okay. And you mentioned that your chances of getting selected for an interview without employee referral as opposed to with? What?
So there were 2 research studies done within the last year. One was by JobVite, the other was by Career Crossroads. And they looked at the rate of getting a call back if you had an employee referral. And they said anywhere from a 1 to 7 to a 1 in 10 chance of getting a call back. Blindly putting in an application without an employee referral, on average, 1 in 100 chance of getting a call back.
1 in 100 as opposed.
Yes.
Wow, That's
Yeah.
really something. So that friend really helps.
Yes, most definitely.
And we will go into how to kind of finesse that connection. But let's talk about how should a person go about, what should they keep in mind when they want to get that $100,000 a year job?
So what I think is interesting is that there are a lot of basics that all job seekers need to go through. You need to understand your job goals and really clarify them, and you need to build your personal brand up as any marketer would do when marketing a product, and pursue multiple channels to find job leads. What I think is interesting for the 100K job seeker, or perhaps the more seasoned job seeker, is to understand how digitalized the job search process has become today. So knowing that submitting an application and hitting the apply button on the website doesn't necessarily guarantee that a person is ever going to look at your resume. So understanding how you need to incorporate this more online process into your job search. For one, you need a resume that's not just going to pass by the human gatekeeper, but it's going to pass through an electronic gatekeeper. Chances are when you're submitting an application online, it's going to be first screened by what we call an application tracking system, ATS software, which basically is programmed to search for certain keywords based on whatever the job description is and ranks your application. And if you're in the higher ranks, then somebody, an actual human, is going to get to see that application. Otherwise, it never makes it there. So you could be the perfect fit for the job, but if you aren't incorporating the right keywords into your resume so that a piece of software screens it appropriately, you're never going to get that chance to prove your value.
And Amanda, how do you notice those keywords? How do you know which ones to use?
So ironically, I work for an online organization, but I'm a paper and pen kind of person. So I recommend finding a few job descriptions. Doesn't matter where they're located in the world, it's just a job that you're targeting that you feel you're truly qualified for. Get a few of them and print them out. Or if you want to use your iPad, go for that. But the idea is to go through and start scanning and figure out what key terms keep popping up. You want the fluffy things such as detail-oriented and multitasker and strong management, but you also want the core skills. Maybe there's technologies that keep showing up or that an MBA is required. You want to look for those. If they're showing up multiple times and they actually apply to you, those need to be woven into your professional summary at the top of your resume, as well as into the company descriptions or the job descriptions and accomplishments you incorporate into your resume.
Are you saying to repeat those words?
Yes, verbatim. If you have said the same thing a different way, you can't assume that the software can interpret that and know that they mean the same thing. So I recommend putting it in both ways, finding places where you can incorporate that same technology, that same terminology. So if it's managing a sales team or managing a large team or leading a large team, you want to look for ways that you can say that you've done those things in different parts of your resume.
Great, okay. And regarding the $100,000 a year jobs, you mentioned at one point when we spoke that a person might be reinventing themselves or becoming a consultant and consulting their way into a company in order to get that job?
Yes, I think when you have a more seasoned job seeker who is now worth a lot of money and may be more difficult to hire because you are competing with a younger group, you oftentimes can create opportunities for yourself. I've specifically worked with clients, a lot of mothers who took time off and then decided to go back into the workforce, and they left at a very high point in their career, and now there's been a large gap and they're trying to re-enter. And oftentimes what really benefits them is looking into their network, especially those they worked with in the past, and identifying where those people have gone and who's working at companies they know, and getting the opportunity to sit down and speak to them and understand the needs or the challenges within that organization and proposing where their skill set could supply that solution. Oftentimes that can come as a result of a contract work or a consulting gig, which can lead to a more full-time employment. But it's a good foot in the door to get you towards that more permanent employment.
Okay, great. And should you actually offer what your consulting expertise is when you're talking about yourself?
I think you most definitely have to be personally branding yourself offline and online. So when you're speaking to people, you want to get that little, I hate the term, but the elevator pitch, understanding what are you great at and passionate about, and how, when those two things are combined, how does that provide value to somebody else, to an employer? It's all about the employer, it's really not about you. So how does your skill set and experience become of value to somebody else? And you want that in a short little, I call it the amuse-bouche, something to whet the appetite, enough so that they get a sense of what you're about. And you want that same type of information, that same branding, positioning for the product that's yourself, to be on your online profiles and in your resume, so that wherever anyone goes to look at you, they know that this is what you're about and this is the type of work or expertise you have and that you're targeting.
Great, okay. Now, a lot of people are going to find themselves transitioning. A lot of government jobs are laying off. A lot of fishermen are becoming increasingly out of work. Right. Also, a lot of people with MBAs are starting to reinvent themselves. Mm-hmm. What should they first keep in mind? What's the first thing they should keep in mind?
So the one thing is, understand that it is a difficult economy. So it's going to take time, and there has to be patience, and you have to try and keep your spirits up, even though I know it's very difficult. But remember that even when you're transitioning to a different type of career, or you're exploring very different options, remember that you do have a lot of value to provide to any employer, regardless of where you're going. So think back over the last 5 to 10 years of your career, and what have you been the go-to person for? What are your best skill sets? What are you known for? And understand that you want to find a way to transfer your strongest skill sets into your next role. So you want to explore opportunities where your expertise could be valuable in a different facet. So for instance, you spoke of the fishing industry, and I know that I live in Long Island. I know that the shores have been damaged and that there's a lot of issues there. But there's also going to be a lot of rebuilding over the next few years. Your industry knowledge, you know the waters, the shorelines, you know the other local businesses. You actually have an expertise that may become valuable when they're trying to decide how they're going to rebuild. So your goal is really to find out who's in charge of these rebuilding projects, and is there a way that you can offer up your expertise or your knowledge of the area to help them rebuild. You could land yourself a contract role because of what you know, that if they brought somebody from outside this area, they would not have that base knowledge, and it would make their job more difficult.
Terrific, thank you. Our fishermen are pretty important to us.
Oh, yes.
And what if you want to transition from government work into private work?
So for anybody who's trying to transition to a different industry, the first thing you need to understand is that the terminology you use in your current industry, whether it's the private sector or the public sector, may not necessarily translate or make sense to somebody outside of your area. So when you're redoing your resume, because it will need an update, you need to translate it into the jargon that someone else is going to understand. So especially in government, if your title makes no sense to anybody outside of your office, you can put in parentheses next to it, what does it mean outside? What would it mean in the corporate world? Perhaps you really do development or sales or training or even HR, and it means something different in your current job. Keep that in mind, as well as if you can't figure out where your skill set applies, first thing I'd say is start looking at former colleagues of yours that have moved on to other businesses. Where was their skill set accepted? What other industries or types of sectors have they gone into? And see, and that's the person you want to sit down and have a cup of coffee with, because you want to know why were they considered valuable, so you can decide if it makes sense for you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. This has been part 1 of On Your Watch. On our second half of the show, Amanda will be back with tips for the recent college graduate, as well as the person who really wants to fine-tune their job searching skills. Please stay tuned.